right, welcome to this week's FHIR Analytics Collaborative meeting. Let's start with some to-dos. So I didn't come up with an agenda this week, but we can talk through some of the open items, and yeah, let's discuss anything you guys want, or we can keep it short. So I think main items here, Nikolai on V1.2 spec writing. That's the major one. We have John back. I don't know if you have anything specific you want to discuss on work you're doing. I know we closed a couple of tickets, or at least one PR that I just saw.
Yeah, I wrote John's PR.
Go ahead, John.
Thanks.
You can...
Yes, so probably two things. The cohort counting thing, and also I made a thing, which is a SQL on FHIR view runner for Microsoft SQL Server, which we haven't quite open sourced yet because I'm still going through the approvals, but I can show you that if you like.
Yeah, sounds good. Let me just take cohort counting and SQL Server. Nice. Okay, well, let's start there. Anything from you, Steve?
Nikolai sent you a PR for the sandbox. I don't know if you had a chance to look at it.
Sorry, I missed. Yeah, I will take a look. So, and I will probably just accept it. So, and I did some progress on documentation. So I spent like 3 hours today. Sadly, I spent like 1.5 hours on fish and all this IG publisher. But yeah, so at least there's some progress and a couple of topics to discuss. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, why don't you go ahead and speak to those, Nick?
Yeah, if you want, we can start with the spec. Yeah, just quickly let me share. Do you see my screen?
Yep.
So what I did, so I put SQL query at the top navigation, and I will work on some description here. That's what I will do for Brian. Yeah. Then in artifacts using fish, I described these two operations. I backported our JSON to the fish stuff. So for example, we can jump, and this is a classical operation page. So I moved our operations text to the standard operation page so that this piece is generated automatically. You see this page, and here I just put the previous pages, like split it in two into the intro and notes. So I hope I fixed all the headers, but I will double check. And what's nice here, now the references are working for value sets and code system, so we can jump to the format, code system, and so that's what we're getting, and the expert statuses. There are a few problems. The first problem with the export, there's a parameter when we want to send view definition as a parameter, but in, let me find it. It should be view resource. Yeah. So the problem that we could not put view definition into the type because for later IG publisher is broken at that moment. I asked it in a Zulip, and Lloyd answered that it's probably not possible at all to put the logical model as a type. But I found the workaround, so I'm saying the type, how it's called, canonical. I'm saying that the type is canonical resource, and the target profile is our logical model URL. And that's, for me, it looks like it may work. So this question is still on Zulip. I don't know, maybe when Graham, he will answer. Is it possible or not to do that way? But that's one problem, but we will probably can work around. And in the worst case, we will just say it's a type resource, yes, and put a text description that it should be view definition. Similar problem with, but that's yeah. So that's one problem, that we could not set the type to view definition yet. But maybe if the target profile working hack, so that will work for us. Another hack and another decision we can discuss. So I'm kind of greedy. So I think that we can try to support all versions and just say that for R4 and R5, we only working on a system level like that. But for R6, we can work on a type and the instance level. We still have to decide. So do we want sitting on these two chairs? But for me, why not? So if we could be like multi-version, We just can say that this will work for R4 and R5, but for R6, we can work that way as well.
Well, we have Gino has arrived.
Yeah.
I have something to say about that.
I missed most of that. Apologies. What are we trying to say? This is what you were talking about the logical model versus additional resource and all that?
So I can show you, Gino, maybe you know the answer. Yes. So the first problem that in parameters of operation definition, we could not use a logical model as a type.
Yep.
So I suggested set the type to canonical resource and target profile to logical model, which sounds for me almost what we want. But that's the one problem. And I think this is a quite big problem because last time on the dev days, Graham said that the logical models are first class. They can go through the VIR. Then I don't understand why I could not put logical model into parameter and why I could not describe that this parameter could describe by this logical model.
Yeah, I don't think that when he said they were first class in FHIR that he meant you can use them in place in FHIR. I think that was specifically talking about in IG Publisher that logical models were first class citizens for the publication tooling. So I don't think there was any interoperability assert he was making, that it was more just, yeah, you can put logical models in IG Publisher and that will use them, but not that they'll just work everywhere in FHIR because they can't. So this is a lot of the things that we're doing with R6 to make additional resources work. This is why, is because we can't put other things in R4.
Yeah, but for us, that means it's a very serious restriction because essentially if we say that it's impossible that we could not support view definition on R4 at all, or we should...
No, I don't think we're saying that. I think what we're saying is in R6, if we define an additional resource as view definition, we can have operations that use view definition, because the resource is defined because it's in the same package, for instance.
Well, that means that we can only define it for R6. So the idea was to try to, got to R4.
Yeah, so then the trick is when we want to go backwards into R4. And so by default, the way we take new resources and backport them is with cross-version extensions via the basic resource. So that in general...
It's probably the worst decision ever, Gina.
Wasn't my call. I didn't invent that mechanism. It's not as terrible now with the way the cross-version extensions work.
It will look really terrible. The view definition, we will just freak out.
No.
View definition, yeah.
It doesn't look nearly as terrible anymore. Here, give me 1 second to see. I'm not set up for sharing because I was heads down on something else. I can come back again. Oops. Can I steal the share for 1 second? Oh yeah, perfect. Yeah. So that looks like the right thing. So now when we have things like we have these profiles, I'll use subscription status is a good one. So this, I need to fix this part of the rendering, and that's one of the things on the list for snapshot 3. But we go ahead and define the profile already to what those resources look like. So we already have just a nice profile you can use directly. And the big trick is it goes and figures out the right code. It goes and tells you the things you have to use from basic, like text, everything else. And then everything else, you get a single extension that is the entire resource built out as a complex extension, essentially. So it's one extension that has parts, and the parts, the nice thing is that then it follows all the rules, that it has what things are mandatory, what things aren't, all that kind of stuff, because you get that inherently by doing it this way. So it's not as ugly as it used to be. In the old version, all of these had full extensions as far as like all the different things. But a lot of that is also because we have things like data type. This one happens to use an int64. We know how to serialize that as a string. We can put that in the extension. And then we have a standard way of saying this was an int64 and now it's serialized as a text. When we start going into parameters, everyone has to do that themselves because we don't have any way of expressing any of that in parameters. So I don't know if that's the direction we want to go, but that's what the tooling will be able to do automatically.
What do you think, guys? It still looks quite ugly. So
It is.
I would even better take the library resource and put the binary of ViewDefinition inside it instead of doing that, to be honest.
Yeah, that's why it's not. I'm not. This is a lot of the stuff. That's why we're pushing for these changes in R6, is because the way of doing it in R4 is terrible.
And
Parameters aren't meant to be stored and persisted explicitly in parameters. It says that. There's very little, the profiling is still a mess. We're still figuring out some of the rules about like adding new parts and not. Like we have tickets open to try and define those things. Like it's just not how it was meant to be used. And so that's the problem we're running into there. We can get there.
yeah, and to be honest, just Gina, to share for you, for example, in our FHIR server, yes, so when we will, what will happen, like realistically, that even if you configure it with R4, we will give you R6 subscriptions.
Yes,
It will work that way. So because I'm pretty sure non-users, non-implementers will do this base like modeling through the basing with extensions, because it looks unreasonable for all of them, for implementers and for the users. So
it does. And yeah, that's one of the things when we were talking about all this early on. I said most vendors have some form of custom resource already.
Yeah. So
because that's the reality, is people want to do something, and when your customer is paying for it, generally you say yes.
Even
and so
implementation has something like this. So the might take, to be honest, if you make backport of additional resources to R4, it will solve all these problems. You will just
yes. The problem is we can't do that legally, because the things in R4 specifically say they are closed set, and here's the list. And so we can't put them in a capability statement. We can't put them in search parameters. We can't put them in operation definitions. We can't put those anywhere.
But you can introduce some kind of extensions and behavior. That's Graham doing all the way, like introducing some magical extensions which like changing behavior completely, like 180 degree.
In theory, we could do all that. I think the problem comes back to, like, in a lot of the pushback I've, when we were talking about it, is regulatory. That regulatory people have a really hard time saying this isn't valid FHIR, because it's not. We can't go back and change what was valid in R4. And so we can say you can add an extension and we can make all that work as a community, but a regulator can't touch that in most cases. And so it works in this case because we're talking about something that's not likely to be regulated, at least in the short term. But when you talk about some of the other things about the evidence-based medicine or the medication space and all those things, those are going to be regulated. And we have to have FHIR legal ways of representing that and, versioning it and telling people what's allowed and profiling it and all of those pieces. Because same thing, how do you do a profile definition on something that's not a resource? You can't right now. In R4, you just can't. So those are the problems.
Should we just accept that we can't really easily backport all of this stuff to R4 and just have what the way that we represent it now, which is like we can represent some things, other things we can't represent in a way that can be kind of technically validated, and then target, as soon as we have this stuff in R6, basically use those tools to finish filling out the story in a fully machine processable way.
Yeah, the only problem that the tools are not ready to process all this R6 stuff, and decision not yet made. Yes, so for example, we don't know. So what I've tried. So I tried define operation. I'm saying resource view definition, and it's failing. Yeah. So, and I have
and that Graham needs to fix, as long as that is in the same package or depends on the package that has the view definition resource, because view definition by itself doesn't exist. And so that definition has to exist. And so it needs to either be in that same implementation guide, or there needs to be the...
it will be, yeah. So, but maybe we can help Graham to fix all this tooling. And I agree, maybe just let's target R6 and just give up on R4 at all. So
yeah, just to back up a minute. So putting aside like tooling fixes, I think I'm continuing to hear something that is, I think, similar to what we discussed before, but what Gino showed is it's like the approach with cross-version extensions is just, it's there, it's possible, right? I think we don't want to invest in it, right? Like we're like, we don't want it, but if there was a demand, there is an avenue, right? Am I characterizing that properly? For a cross-version extension for R4 such that view definitions could be used in a legal way in the operation definition. Like there is a legal avenue for R4 compatibility. We just personally don't want to invest in it at this point. Would you say that that's correct?
And based on what between you and what John was saying, I would say, yeah, let's get the models and everything the way we want them. And that's what we'll be working on for the additional resource for R6.
Right.
And then we start saying, okay, for R4, here's how you would do it via the cross-version extensions if you want to do that. Even here's how you would do it with a custom resource, because you're just serializing the thing like any other resource for people like Nikolai, that we're just going to support it and that's it. And we start exposing those types of things to say, yeah, here's examples of it even. I don't know how much we can express, but I think the point is, you guys none of us have to do anything to make the cross-version stuff, with the asterisk of I have to make the cross-version stuff work. But other than that, that's all automated.
No, it's not, to be honest, all automated, because implementers still have to do all these conversions. And I'm not sure that you will publish libraries for any language the implementers will use, and so on. So it's let's be honest. So to support this, people will have to do maybe a lot of effort, because like writing this converter from basic resource and cross-version extensions to the just normal view definition resource in Rust will take maybe a few weeks, maybe months, maybe a couple of months. Who knows?
Well, yes and no. I'll push back a little bit on there, because I found this when I was doing the subscription stuff. Serialization format is 1% of the work involved with supporting subscriptions. And I would say the same thing is true in this case. The serialization format that we're using for transferring the view definition, whether it's the straight model, whether it's a basic, whether it's a different version of the basic, that's a few hundred lines of code at most to do the translations back and forth. I mean, that's nothing. The hard part is the view definition.
Yeah.
And that's what we found over the course of the several years we've been doing that with subscriptions is, what matters is people start using this version. We have to go and map whatever those things are back and forth into what we're doing internally. But whether it's serialized as a JSON, an XML with extensions, as a basic, as a parameters, doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I just am thinking about like how likely it is. So if I implemented this in Pathling, right? So view definition resource, I can just do like what Nikolai's talked about, just basically do a custom resource. I could implement like a profile of basic in addition to that, and you have people passing around basics with extensions, all that sort of stuff. What likelihood is it going to be that anybody uses that basic with extensions sort of version of this? I think it's pretty unlikely.
I don't know. And that's why it's, if you need to put it in a generic FHIR server that you don't control, like you can add a custom resource to Pathling. Most just general users can't add custom resource support to their FHIR servers. And that's the thing about basic and binary and all these things is like, well, yeah, you can just put a doc ref, you can put a binary, you can put a basic, because that's one thing the server supports, and it's already a stock resource.
Yeah, and that's where in the context of SQL and FHIR, maybe it makes a little bit of difference, because it's not just another piece of data like some of the other resources. There's kind of functionality attached to it.
It's the same for subscription.
Exactly.
Engine should understand the subscription, yeah.
Exactly. When you go to do subscriptions, you can store them. Doesn't matter. That's useless. You need all the server backend to do all the processing and everything else. And that's why once you get to that, when you say what's your serialization format.
But my take that, let's see, Gina, that implementers will just mix versions. They maybe eventually do support these basic and cross-version extensions, but they will not be very happy to do that. So
we saw that with subscriptions as well, that we said, here's the R5 subscription topic, and here's the trick. Some implementers said no problem, and other implementers said that is a physical impossibility, we'll never implement that. And that's why we had all the things back and forth with R4, R4B, and R5 and all these things, is when you start saying, if you're trying to get it broad across, yeah, some vendors will and some vendors won't. You know, they say we have an R4 endpoint and it's R4 and that's it. And if you can make it in R4, we'll support it. And if you can't, it's not going in this release.
Then we have to make decisions.
Yeah. Well, you know, to be blunt, I think a lot of those are going to be outside the scope of SQL on FHIR anyway, because I think a lot of those are the facade servers, and the facade servers are really going to struggle to implement SQL on FHIR anyway, because what they're going to need to do is actually map their internal databases, not the FHIR versions. And so I think a lot of them aren't going to just have generic, here's a SQL. It'll be, oh, if we define one in an IG that is of a static set, they'll go through and do the mapping on their side and then make it available to their users and everything else. Because, you know, I can just imagine if you have some weird internal database that has a different structure and a different table hierarchy, then you say, here's the SQL on FHIR, you're going from your internal to FHIR and then mapping SQL on FHIR, like the performance is going to be horribly bad.
Gina, may I ask the question? As I understand, the Graham now is very focused on supporting additional resources and all this stuff and tooling. So for us, the decision could be go with R6 and additional resource, design for R6 and report Graham where the tools are not working and try to fix them. And then we will publish for R6 and we can decide about R4. Should it be this cross-version semi-automatical translation or not? Yeah.
I think that makes sense. We do have to go and build out resource proposals so that we register ViewDefinition as a resource name and everything else, because I don't think any of that's been done. If we have the agreement on it's just ViewDefinition, or if we have one or two resources, I can take care of all of the administrative side and ask FMG. FMG controls the namespace, so we have to go and get it approved and all that kind of stuff. But,
you mean to register it as additional resource?
Yep.
I was thinking that the Graham keeping in mind of ViewDefinition as one of the first additional resources, no?
Yes, he's keeping in mind, but he doesn't have the authority to just make them.
Yeah, if you can help us with that, So
yeah, that's not a problem. If ViewDefinition is the only one, I can work on all that. I'll take a task to do that.
And John, Steve, Arjun, what are you thinking about this type of strategy? Go with R6?
Yeah, I'd say just put it into R6 because that's it's the cleanest. I agree. We want things to look clean, and then we'll pick we're gonna have to pick a strategy for all the other prior versions and stick with it.
Yeah, that's my feeling as well. In that, I think about what is the purpose of the formalization to the standard, right? Like right now, I think in our experience thus far, we haven't been forced to cross that bridge, right? For R4, and so that's what I was sort of getting at. In that, I think focusing on a version on R6 using the R6 scheme makes sense. So I will put a to-do down for you, Gino, on that. And then we have what we have today. If there is an impetus, right? If there is a push through some, in our small group, there doesn't seem to be one, right? To say we're going to step outside of the formal boundaries of R4, that's fine, right? And then we might indicate in some way that if a user or consumer of the specification has a requirement, right, for an official compatible R4 version, there is a pathway forward, right? Come and talk to us about it, right? So we don't have to take on that additional labor unless there's a demand, like an explicit demand for that labor.
Yeah,
because we already are outside of the official balloting process. We don't have to enter. We can choose when to enter it.
Yeah, and I'll say making the basic stuff that I have all the tooling for, making the tooling also output a parameters profile that looks like that, probably a day or two of work. You know, the thing that goes through.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah, we can do this backport stuff. But still, Gina, I think that we should in a FHIR, we should discuss it deeper. Is it already we decided already on this basic and cross-version extension that is official way to backporting stuff, Or there's still some doubts about it?
So far, that has been the official, and there's a bunch of guides that use it.
And who adopted this stuff?
Well, it's because that's what we do in subscriptions, and subscriptions has been picked up by DaVinci PaaS. It's been picked up by IHE Mobile Health. It's been picked up by the Canadian things that they're proposing. It's being picked up by Public Health it's in ECR, I think. It's in there's a bunch of places that have it that are using subscriptions, and subscriptions uses that model. It's the only thing we could figure out that makes a durable resource on the server, because you can't do that with the parameters. And if you do a binary, then you could serialize JSON inside a binary, but then you also need to serialize the XML, and then you get into the same problem of how do you validate and all these different pieces. So
Yeah,
I'm happy to
let's
keep
have the
talking
discussion
about
on FHIR camp, because Vadim just reached me out and said that FHIR is getting more and more complicated. And when I'm looking on this base and cross version, I see how the FHIR becoming HL7 v3 or v2. So it's freaking the general idea to be simple, just freak it out. So
that's why, and I'll say I've started pushing for the additional resource stuff. Boz and I started talking about it about 3-4 years ago now, at the work group meeting, saying we needed to do this, and it's taken this long to get to it. But we said the same thing. We're like, we need to be able to separate these two things out. And so that's where all this started, was Boz and I were discussing, and then we started pitching it. So,
and I still believe that back additional resources may be the better strategy, but let's see. Okay, I will try to.
Yeah. But yeah, there's that one I can tell you is going to be a hard, pretty much impossible, just because those things are defined and closed, and a lot of them say they're normative. And so we can't add
You're
it to
smart
a
enough. If you were able to invent this basic with the cross-version extensions, you'll probably find the way to do it.
Yeah,
Okay,
I mean,
so
that's why
I'm just trolling, but let's let this discussion. Yeah,
I'm happy, and I would be happy to discuss that, especially over drinks.
let's jump to
Buy Chino a drink, because he's been
No, over a
4
drink.
years.
We'd have a much more productive and fruitful discussion.
Oh, and Chino's going to Portugal, right? So yeah, so well, you guys have a good time talking about that.
Because the key people is Lloyd and Graham that you need to convince. And I'll tell you, Lloyd is a tough sell, and he's all for the closed system. So you need drinks.
Yeah, let's do the session.
You can meet some irate implementers and customers, and maybe it'll convince them. All right, all that aside, all right, so API work, thanks very much, Nikolai. Shall we move on to discuss cohort counting and SQL Server? Maybe a little demo of SQL Server implementation first, and then maybe we talk about cohort counting.
Sure. Let me just share my screen. No, don't do this. Have I got permission thing going on? I've got too many computers now. Just give me 1 minute.
No, you're good. That's why I was setting up for my sharing. I use OBS to composite, and then so I just set up a projector, and it shares a 1080p section of my main screen, and that way I can snap windows there and highlight and whatever, and change what's being shared without sharing my whole desktop. But that's a lot of setup.
What is OBS, Gino?
OBS is open broadcast software. So it's like in this view, I have a camera that's pointing at me, and then I have a green screen behind me, and another camera pointing out the window, and it composites and adds all that stuff.
I see.
And I can turn on all these different things, like I can turn off if I want.
So that's not a view out your window. Oh,
That is
cool.
out my window. That's why I can change it. That's the outside camera that's pointing out there. But I have, all these fixed ones, or I can do, sitting on the beach for my fireside chat.
Nice. Okay, so what this is it's basically a data loader and SQL 5 view train for Microsoft SQL Server. Why did I do this? Well, I don't know, but I think it's because a lot of people use Microsoft SQL Server, right? Like, I think it's one of the most used databases in the healthcare service organizations that I deal with anyway. So I think this is kind of
That's a lot of fun to write transpile.
I don't know about that, but so anyway, let's just get straight onto a demo, shall we? So I can, first of all, I can load some data into it. You can see my password there, but that's all right because this is an internal development server. So it can take like a bunch of ND-JSON and it will just load it into a really simple table structure, similar to like what you use in AidBox, I think, Nikolai, which is basically just storing the JSON in a column. Microsoft SQL Server doesn't actually have a binary JSON type. Actually, that's not true. SQL Server 2025 preview, I believe, has just put in this binary JSON type, which I actually haven't tried yet. I've targeted, I think, 3 SQL Server versions, 2017, 2019, and 2022 with this so far. But I'm looking forward to adding 2025 to it and testing like the performance boost that we get with like a binary JSON column type. But that's kind of on the to-do list. So you can load the data in, and then we should actually be able to just go in here and say like select star from FHIR resources, and we can sort of see that it's just a bunch of FHIR resources in a table. And then we should be able to go to like, one of our examples, US core blood pressure, and just put it into standard in and get a query out of standard out. So this is kind of what the SQL looks like. And I'll just bring this into the SQL editor here. And so it has a path syntax, but it's very simplistic. Like it doesn't do all the nice things that JSON path does. It only does a little bit, and then you've got to kind of break out into where clauses and other things to do more complicated stuff. So it's still the basic principle that you basically have this kind of explode lateral join type operation combined with a bit of path stuff for descending into the JSON, but you kind of have to do a combination of that. So we should be able to run this. And I feel like it's not blindingly fast, but that's probably to be expected because it's actually just working on the JSON string and doing parsing and all that sort of stuff. But hopefully it's still useful anyway. So so this is still a private repo, but I'm just working on getting it open sourced at the moment. And it should just be like a NPM package. I did have a look at possibly making it more Microsoft native thing, but I think TypeScript NPM package is actually probably the most useful universally accepted way of distributing something like this. I feel like I went a little bit down making it into a .NET tool, but I found that for me anyway, I'm obviously very biased and I'm not a Microsoft person at all. So that's what you get when you get me to make it. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
If you want me to make a NuGet tool out of it, I can do that for you after.
How are you?
What's the value of that? I guess maybe one thing is like, in locked down kind of contexts where they kind of only let you install certain things and they say, we're going to package this tool up in Microsoft land and kind of manage its installation and all that sort of stuff. Maybe that would be easier there.
To me, what I found is it's really about what ecosystem you're in. A lot of people who are firmly in .NET don't have all the NPM and Node and which version is current and what's installed and all that kind of stuff. And so NPX is great if you have all the toolchain installed and updated and you're working in that. If you work in .NET every day, you may not even have it installed. And then, you run into all the same problems that people are trying to do it. And it's the same thing with the Java ecosystem. If you have it updated and you have your JVM and you have all that stuff up to date, it's great. And if not, it's really painful when you want to give someone which JDK do you need? And no, you needed the JRE, not the JDK, or vice versa, and all these different things. So I don't think it's painful, but if you want it that way, it's tricky to do the first time, and then after that, it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I think it's kind of mitigated by the fact that this is, because this is TypeScript and you transpile the TypeScript and it puts it into basically some JavaScript which can run on any node. Like it doesn't matter if you've got any Node.js, it's going to run, right? So it's not like, oh, you need to like run multiple node versions or all this sort of thing. It's really pretty simple, I think.
That's true. TypeScript becoming the last programming language, to be honest. And may I have a question? So how are you parsing FHIR?
I just have an Antler parser and I just do it. I've implemented like a visitor and so where is it?
Okay.
So there's some. Oh.
Yeah, I got you. So you just generated Antler parser and doing this.
Yep. Yeah, and so there's a part that's the FHIR visitor which handles the FHIR part, and then there's a part that handles the ViewDefinition constructs and basically put the two together and you get a functional solution.
Yeah. So we published the alpha version of Atomic HR FHIR, which is smart enough. So it has analyzer. It can enrich the FHIR IST with the type information. So, and if you need this, take a look. So it's open source, Atomic HR FHIR. It's even now on a dev in FHIR lab. And when we were designing this, I was keeping in mind transpilers. So it can do a lot of heavy lifting in parsing, enriching, and analyzing the FHIR expressions, enriching with the type information, and then you can work with this IST, which is very human and machine readable. So it is it's manual parser, so it's not even Antler. So take a look.
Yeah. So in the future, you could kind of not use Antler. You could have a library which is already basically gives you like a visitor, if you like, for FHIR, but also has like some value add in terms of it's adding in type information along the way and all the rest of it.
Yeah, that's exactly what Atomic HR FHIR is doing. It already
that sounds really good.
It can load already packages with R5, R6, R4. It can parse the FHIR, analyze, it provide a lot of errors like validation of the FHIR. Yeah. I think when you publish, maybe I will try to contribute.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and that probably might even cut out a bit of code as well. So yeah, but it all seems to work. Passes the tests, except the boundary functions, of course, which is impossible to pass. And so I'll open source it and get it up on the implementations page. So that's
all right.
So the
oh no, go ahead.
I think there's a lag.
I think interesting
go ahead.
one for I think this would be an interesting one for benchmarking at some point, particularly of the FHIR engines and parsers, because that's another big difference in how languages handle all of that. And there's been a lot of work, like in the FHIR and the C# side, we've been taking the FHIR expressions, converting them into C# and compiling them so that they get optimized by the C# compiler and all that kind of stuff. So it'd be interesting to see as you build up large sets of ND-JSON, how they all compare.
Well, I guess you've got two different types of things here, right? So this is actually kind of similar to pathling in a way, and I guess 8box in that we're taking FHIR plus view definitions and we're turning it into SQL, right? And we're turning it to, and then the SQL engine is optimizing that to the extent that it can, which is slightly different, but similar to if you're programmatically running FHIR over individual resources, and then you're trying to optimize how fast that piece of code is.
Yeah.
But we're in the case of, say, pathling, we've done a lot of work to kind of basically translate FHIR into SQL, but in SQL that is compatible with the optimizations that Spark already has for doing things fast at scale and all the rest of it. So like, don't break the optimizations basically, or work within the sort of constraints there. So I haven't done a lot of effort to optimize this at all, really. It's working. It looks kind of acceptable, but I don't think it's going to set the world on fire in terms of performance compared to say Postgres or Spark, but I think just having a working implementation there, and you can take it and you can make it a view, you can kind of materialize it as a table, all the rest of it. And then I'm looking forward to trying out the native JSON type. I think that'll probably make a big difference to performance in this database.
Cool. Very cool. Yeah, I can see people being potentially interested in it. Actually, it's kind of interesting that we've had a number of implementations and have not gotten to SQL Server for some reason, but hopefully there'll be a renewed interest, and this could be one of the implementations that people gravitate towards. Cool. All right. Thanks, John. So we have only a couple minutes left, 9 minutes. I don't know, probably won't be able to do cohort counting any justice in that short of a time. We had some other agenda items, and maybe we talk about cohort counting next week.
Only cohort, yeah. The John submitted I think even more important, this for questionnaires, the recur, or how it's called.
Yeah, repeat directive, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I believe that's completed, right?
It is completed. I wouldn't say it's fully validated, to be honest, but that's okay because it we've just this is kind of just edge spec stuff. I think it could still shift around a little bit. It's implemented in the reference implementation, passes all the tests. It's currently halfway through implementation in Pathling. I think it's still an open question how easy it is to implement across a broad range of engines, which is the main thing that I'm worried about, and what kind of caveats there might be on that. So I think to really bed this down, we kind of need to get at least a few different engines implementing it just to validate that it's feasible and that it's not too complicated and all that sort of stuff. But I think it's definitely useful for various different use cases, and it actually was kind of born out of people a number of different independent people asking me for this, particularly with the use case of analyzing questionnaire response data, which is really pretty ugly without this in many cases. So that's kind of where it came from.
Yeah, we definitely want to validate on our side because
Yeah.
SDC team really want to integrate with the view definitions, and yeah, we will try to implement and provide feedback.
John, are there tests for it yet?
There are tests. In fact, they're already kind of showing up in that implementations page and the test page because Nikolai just merged the PR just a moment ago. So you should be able to have a look at that.
Thanks.
Cool. Nice. Yeah, let's see if other implementers, we can raise the salience a little bit and see if any other implementers would be interested in this. And testing the implementations as well, and the implementation difficulty. Question, were we considering this, well, obviously for V 2.1, but as an optional element, or were we considering it as a base specification sort of core element? I don't know if we ever talked about that.
No, we haven't talked about that. And I don't really know about the optional thing. I think if first job is to figure out whether it poses any problems and if there's any sort of undue implementation difficulty with it. And then I think we should talk about that. But if we get into optional, I think that has some complications of its own, right? Because then we have to think about how we manage that and profiles and potentially and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think we've done enough homework to actually figure that out yet.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that sentiment. I'm just recalling, I don't think we have any sort of operations that are optional, right? And so,
or directives, yeah. No,
directives,
we don't currently.
Yeah, right. So we don't. So this would be something new if that was a direction we went down.
Yeah, by default.
Yeah, profiling is possible here.
Let's try to make it just in next release.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it will be ready to the next release. Maybe we need like couple or 3 implementation of it. And you already, John, implemented this in Puzzling?
Not completely. Not released, no, but getting there.
Okay, let's just get some more knowledge around that from a couple of different avenues, and then we can make a better decision.
I put it on my to-do list, John.
Great, thanks.
Okay, cool.
But I think for ETL tools like yours, Steve, it much simpler than for transport.
Yeah, for sure. Mine will be a lot easier than
Yeah.
messing with a database. Yeah.
So database, it should be like with recursive, like, I don't know, common table expression, something like this. Let's see. Or we will have to fix the how many levels we're gonna do this. Yeah, just generate repeating stuff. That may be the option as well. So do you have any parameter to say that I want to limit the depth or not?
There's no parameter so parsing has the advantage that you can basically introspect the schema as you build the query. I don't know, maybe things like JSON path have recursion in them. I'm not sure. Things like, say, SQL Server might be interesting. Like, as you say, SQL Server has the ability to do recursive table expressions, but I haven't tried that. So I think if we could implement it, reference implementation part, Postgres, SQL Server, we would start to get a pretty good picture of what's involved. Yeah, I think it's still an open question as to whether, implementations would have to have limitations on it, or whether we need some sort of spec mechanism to kind of, standardize that. So yeah, interesting.
Yeah, the temptation, because in the JSON path specification, there are some similar queries, but we have to check, can we map it or not? Otherwise, we have to jump to CTE and try to do this with CTE, but I'm not sure that CTE would be the best performant way to do that. It's possible, definitely, and most of databases do support like recursive CTE, but I'm not sure about the final performance of it.
Yeah, I mean, the alternative is that you effectively just have to explicitly have n levels of unnesting and repetition of all the unnesting in your query itself. And someone who asked me about it, I wrote them an email that was about 5 pages long with like about 3 different kind of approaches to doing this. And you could kind of you can obviously programmatically build up a view definition and all that sort of stuff, but it's all pretty ugly. Yeah, so that's kind of where it came from. So it's still kind of experimental, and we'll just see where it goes.
All right, cool. So I think we have a plan going forward. Thanks, John. We're at time, so I think I will have to drop certainly, and we can call it a
Steve,
day.
I accepted pull request, and so I'm a bad guy. So if you can ping me on the chat when you're doing this, that would be like more guaranteed.
Sure, no problem. There was no hurry, so
yeah, and I will set up the auto deployment, and it
cool.
should work. And I maybe just probably provide you right access to this repo, so you would be able.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I put in some comments for other people a little framework for other people to put their implementations to. So
whenever Puzzling starts supporting API, we can add it.
Right. Yeah.
The playground.
All right, cool. Yeah, nice to see progress on the spec. And yep, the conference planning is going well. I think you 3 guys. Sorry, Gino, I don't think you made the cut. We filled up the slots.
Yeah, so that's okay.
I know. But
I have it on my list. I just Graham asked me to do some work, and I've been swamped.
We actually had more speakers than I thought. So, but yeah, if there is a great topic, we'll be able to fit you in. But yeah, so just keep your eyes out for more updates on that.
Cool.
All right.
So
thanks, guys.